Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome to the next video in your program. Today we're going to talk about stress, and we're going to specifically look at what it is, how we get stress, and how we can reduce it. It's a really good technique that you can eliminate and reduce stress in the moment. It's a great little technique. Okay, so looking at stress historically, and thankfully we haven't got any saber-toothed tigers running around, not that I know of, but typically there would be threats from wild animals and maybe threats from neighboring tribes trying to kill us. Unfortunately, we don't have to deal with too much of that, certainly not the animals, but maybe we've got some aggressive humans that we do need to deal with. But generally, we don't have to deal with life-threatening situations all the time. But stress is in all parts of our life, and that can be physical, can be psychological, can be emotional, at work, at home, at family, money, sickness. We're exposed to a lot of stress in the modern day world. So very, very different stress to how we were exposed to, hundreds of thousands, even millions of years ago. We're going to specifically look at stressors and stress. Stresses are the things that actually stress us out, and stress is how we deal with, or the reaction, or how our body actually deals with or reacts to the actual stressor rather. And as I mentioned before, they can be psychological and they can be physical. So stress can in physical, like let's say you were stuck outside in the cold with no coat on in freezing weather, that could be considered a stressful environment. Physically stressed, you're cold, you're emotional, you're tired, that could be a very stressful situation. But physiological and stress is known as a silent killer. So it's just things that go on, that the internal dialogue that we have could be very, very stressful. So it really depends on how we look at that. There's two parts of this. And this is what happens, and this is regardless whether it's physical or psychological. It doesn't matter. This is the reaction. This is actually what happens by the body, in the body, when something stressful occurs. So a stressful situation happens. Now, immediately, we're talking within less than half a second, millisecond, however much that is, not a lot, the body will release a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Okay, instantly, massive flood of acetylcholine, which in turn will release adrenaline, or epinephrine, as our friends in North America prefer. Different words, same hormone. Now, adrenaline will increase heart rate, increase blood pressure, our pupils dilate, and it's really getting the body ready for action, ready for movement. It's thinking, okay, there's a threat here. There's something I don't like. Do I need to move? Do I need to say something? Do I need to do something? So it's priming us to actually get ready, take action, and move. And this is, as we know, is our fight or flight system. You may have heard that. But also it will expand the lungs and shuttle blood, or redistribute blood and glucose, which is is the preferred source of fuel to certain organs into the brain. It's thinking, okay, we need to be switched on. We need to do something here. But the opposite of this, very, very clever, it will shut down certain parts of the body that it thinks maybe not as important, so reproduction and digestion. This is often why when you get nervous and you get a stressful situation, you get the butterflies, and what that is actually the blood being shut down. Blood vessels will actually contract in that area. It's thinking, well, we don't need to eat food. We're in a stressful environment. We need to run. We need to move. We need to change something, change our physiology, change our state. It's not time to be sitting down and enjoying a nice lunch. And the same with reproduction. So for men, I can only speak for men, obviously being a man, this is why things in that area tend to shrivel up and contract and think, this is no time to be reproducing, no time to find a mate. So obviously the equivalent happens in women. I'm not sure of that exact process. I'm not even going to try and go there, but you understand what I'm saying. So it's very clever. The body will shut down certain areas, contract, blood vessels contract, blood will move away from that areas, and blood and glucose will be propelled to the areas that we actually need to deal with the stress, to deal with the stressor, so to speak. So that's the process of stress. That's what happens. I mentioned this before, the fight or flight. That is really the fight or flight. And this system is really primed to say, okay, move, do something, run away, or if you can't run, we need to fight. Now, the modern day equivalent of fighting, although some people still do that, is freeze and say something stupid. And this is very often why when people are super stressed, they say something, they blurt something out, probably something that you shouldn't say, and they get nervous, they get a tremor, and all that's the adrenaline racing through the body. And when it's not, when you don't move, that's when you get the tremor, they get that agitation. And usually when people say something that they like I said, they say something they shouldn't say, and maybe they say something quite foolish, make a mistake, make an error. So it's in a stressful environment, it's primed for action. And if you don't move, don't do something, that's when you get that agitation, maybe say something stupid. So now you know what the fight or flight system actually is, and what actually happens with the body. So looking at long-term ways to decrease stress. Now, we've all heard about yoga, meditation, massage, and some breath work. There's loads of different formats of that. You can do Kundalini breath work. There's Wim Hof is doing a really powerful way of breathing. Box breathing. There's so many different ideas around this breath work now, but they're long-term solutions. It's all very well saying, well, go and do that. But if you're in something right now, a stressful environment happens in front of you, or you see something, or you feel something, it's no good saying, okay, let me put my bag down. I'm just going to trot off and do a yoga session. 90 minutes later, I'm stressed, de-stressed. It doesn't work like that. These are long-term solutions. But what can you do right now? But I tell you what you can't do, or you shouldn't do, probably all done it, is telling someone to calm down. It definitely doesn't work. In fact, it's been shown, scientific studies have shown that it actually makes the situation worse. It can actually wind the person up and exacerbate the situation. So if you're trying to help someone that's in a stressful environment, don't tell them to calm down. Okay, but what you can do is what I'm going to show you now. This is a really great technique to decrease stress instantly, in the moment, in the now, in real time. Okay, and what we're trying to do with this system is activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And you may have not heard of that term, but you may have heard of the rest and digest. And that's really the system that happens when we're eating and when we're going to sleep. So we're trying to turn on or turn off the sympathetic nervous system, and the opposite of that is the parasympathetic system. And there's a really great technique called the physiological SIGH. Okay, the physiological SIGH, S-I-G-H. And this is how it works. I'm going to do a little demonstration, as you can see me. So I'll read it first and I'll show you exactly how it works. So you do 2 large inhales, followed by a long, slow exhale. And it goes a little bit like this. You repeat that again. And you can see that big breath. It's actually very hard to get a second top up. So you expand in the lungs, getting as much air into the lungs as possible. And then when you think you can't go anymore, just topping up that extra little bit. It's actually quite hard to get any more air in there, and having that really long, slow exhale. And this isn't just, woo-woo, a bit out there. It's grounded in physiology and science, and it's got some real strong data, some strong evidence behind it. It's an excellent technique. And you literally, in the moment, it will turn off the sympathetic nervous system and switch on the parasympathetic nervous system. And funny enough, we actually do this when we fall asleep, literally seconds before we fall asleep, although I'm not actually physically aware of doing that. This is what the data tells us. We actually do a physiological SIGH, and sometimes we do it in the middle of the night as well. I guess it's the body's way of helping us relax, get into that deep sleep from when we're moving from consciousness, being awake, into unconsciousness, into that sleep state. I've actually jumped ahead of myself there. Here's how it works. Double inflates the millions of sacs in your lungs. So I've kind of jumped ahead of myself there. But yeah, it's interesting to know that what happens, that long, slow exhale releases carbon dioxide that builds up in the blood when we're stressed. So as I said, it's simple, it's very effective, very fast. An interesting fact, I found it quite interesting when I found this out, that the lungs aren't just 2 big sacs. They're actually millions of tiny sacs. It's almost like millions of small balloons within one larger, or 2 balloons. And actually, if you spread out the surface area of the lungs, it would actually spread out to the size of a tennis court. So that's I found that was fascinating. Do you need to know it? Probably not. So the double breath, the double inhale, And that long, slow exhale will help to release the carbon dioxide. Simple, very effective, and fast. And I hold my hand up. I'm only passing this information on. I learned this quite recently from this guy, Andrew Huberman, his podcast. I actually heard Andrew on Joe Rogan's podcast. I thought, this guy's fascinating. He's a neuroscientist, but he's very interested in the physiology, so how the brain interacts with the body in terms of building muscle, burning fat, with sleep, with stress, all these type of things. So he's got almost like a fitness and nutrition angle to the neuroscience that he looks at. Found him on Joe Rogan, looked into his podcast. I think it's called Huberman Labs. You can download that on Spotify, Google, Amazon, all the normal places that you would, Apple, sorry, that you would look for on podcasts. But also what's better is actually they're filmed. So he actually has a YouTube channel, and I watch most of the videos on there. And there's usually about 90 minutes of him just talking to the microphone, but literally fascinating. And I learned about that physiological side. I've yet to actually deploy it into a stressful situation of my own, but I will. So thank you for that, Andrew. Right, so here's the end of the module, but some action steps. First of all, check out Andrew's podcast and YouTube channel, as I just mentioned, and try the physiological SIGH. The way to get the most out of these modules and the things I'm going to talk about and help you with is to actually try them. And what I say to all my clients is, you'll never know if something is going to work or resonate with you unless you try. So rather than saying, I'm not going to try that, it doesn't seem like it's going to work for me, try it, because there'll be certain things that you try and think, actually, this works. I can get behind this. I like this. And there'll be certain things that you won't, you'll dismiss. And you know what? That's a good thing. Just because I'm showing you something in a module doesn't mean you have to do it. So check out Andrew's podcast, go and see him, the real deal, for yourself. Try the physiological SIGH. Let me know how you get on, and put this technique into action next time you feel a bit stressed, or teach someone. The best way I've learned, the best way to teach yourself is actually learn these things yourself and pass the information on. I found, rather than hoarding it to yourself, whatever you learn on this program and in life, learn it, implement it, and then pass it on to other people. And that's the way to pay it forward, if you will. So that's the end of the module. I'll see you on the next video and in the next coaching call. All the best.